Hello everyone, my name is Drew and I want to give you guys a very quick first impressions video on how I feel about Playerunknown's Battlegrounds on the Xbox One. I wanted to be just clear that I am playing this on the Xbox One S, not the X or the original Xbox One, so I have a bit of a performance boost over the original Xbox One, but not nearly the height of the Xbox One X, so I think I'm getting mostly like the standard experience with this game. So what I'm going to do for this first impressions is I'm going to give you guys a list of pros and then cons of how I feel about the experience. Now keep in mind this isn't a full review because this game still is in early access or game preview on the Xbox Live Store, so I'm not going to give a full review. I don't give scores or anything like that. I'm just giving you guys a bit of advice as to whether you should invest in this game and actually spend your time on it, considering there is no trial. I also want to send you guys over to XCage Game, which is where I got this gameplay from. I didn't record any myself because I was playing this in my living room where I don't have any recording equipment, so thanks XCage for providing the gameplay for this video. Now, not surprisingly, there are a lot of cons with this version of the game, but before we get into that, let's go ahead and go over the things that I actually like with the Xbox One version of PUBG. Overall, the movement, combat, and vehicle controls in this game are done pretty well. The movement feels fine for somebody who's played PUBG before on PC. In fact, if you played this on PC before, a lot of the controls make a lot of sense, like holding down the left trigger to aim or pressing the left trigger to aim with iron sights. Those controls might be a little odd to some though, especially people who only play games on consoles, because that's not really something you see on consoles, the toggle to aim or something like that. So if you're primarily a console player, be ready for kind of a steep learning curve as far as these games' controls are concerned. Add that on top of the fact that there is no aim assist in this game, which I see as a plus, a huge plus. That means that the skill gap in this game is going to be pretty wide for a long time. Vaulting is included in this release as well, and I'm very grateful for that, even though it's not the most consistent thing ever. Vehicles I think actually control better than the PC version, but that's because I prefer the analog stick control method for controlling vehicles rather than the WASD kind of imprecise kind of movement that you get with vehicles in a lot of PC games. Also, they included free aim by holding down the right bumper and looking around with the right stick, which is greatly appreciated. I was really worried it wasn't going to make it onto the console version. I'm just really glad that they included this. It makes it actually feel like the entire PUBG experience has been translated over. They did manage to get everything in here. There's a lot of little things with the controls that I really like the fact that you can pick things up quickly by just pressing X. I also like that the D-pad has some quick functions like switching to your grenade or switching the fire mode of your weapon or switching to consumables, which is really nice. Having that speed in combat is going to be absolutely necessary in this version because, well, the inventory system management isn't the best, but more on that later. What I will say is that if you've played the game on PC, the control scheme makes sense. It works. Once you get into the game, it all makes sense. And if you've never played the game before, it's something that you'll definitely learn over time. It may be difficult to get into at first, but it all just generally works, and it feels very fluid once you're actually in the game. Now, if you're new to the Battle Royale genre in general, you've never played Fortnite or PUBG, then this can be a pretty intense and intimidating experience your first go-around. What I will say is the reason that this game is so beloved and so popular right now is because there's such an intensity to the combat and a steep learning curve that while there's no progression system in the game other than earning points to earn cosmetics, you do feel like you're getting better every single time you play it. It's hard to explain, but you start to learn the map a little bit more. You start to learn the weapons, which ones work and which ones don't, which ones are worth your while, and which ones you're better off just leaving around. Even though the control scheme for this game and everything might be a little intimidating for new players, you will get accustomed to them and you will feel better over time. So I do recommend it to people who like that kind of gameplay where high intensity moments, you know, those kind of games like Rainbow Six Siege when you're the last person alive on your team and it's all down to like the last 15 seconds of the round. That kind of intensity is the kind of stuff you'll feel when you're in the top 10 kind of games. Is it frustrating when you die and lose all your progress, like all the gear and stuff like that? Well, yeah, but you can very quickly get into another game and try again. This isn't like DayZ where it has a slow build up and then a very intense ending when you either die or kill somebody. This game has a consistent pace to it where you're very fast at the beginning. There's kind of a slow mid-game as you're kind of gearing up and finding different compounds and things like that, but then a very intense and tactical end game that can be either slow or fast depending on how you're playing and how other people are playing. Also, you can play this game with either one other person or up to 3 other people in duos and squads, so if you're feeling like you don't want to jump into this headfirst by yourself, you can play it with friends, even though it is a weird thing to balance with getting loot and things like that, so you have to keep stuff like that in mind. And for my last positive thing for this version of the game, I'm just honestly impressed that they got it to work, even though they did have to make a lot of sacrifices to get it to work on the Xbox. And that leads me right into the cons. Now, before I talk about what everybody's asking about with this game and how it performs on the Xbox One, I do want to touch on one thing, and that's the fact that there is no trial for this game, despite the fact that every single game in the game preview program on Xbox Live up until this point has had a trial. Game preview is like early access on Steam, where you can play games before they officially launch. But normally, all of these games in this program have a 1-hour trial where you're allowed to play the game for an hour in its full state. You don't just get a demo, you get the full game, and you get to play it for an hour, and that's included there so that you can try a game before you buy it, because not all of these games will be good, instead of having to gamble on games like you do on Steam Early Access. However, for whatever reason, PUBG on Xbox One does not have this 1-hour trial, which I think this is like the most essential game that really needed it. I mean, this game is huge right now, but a lot of players on consoles that just play console games haven't gotten the chance to try it, or don't even know what the game is. They've heard how popular it is, but they have no idea what the gameplay is like or what the controls are like. First of all, I think that this isn't there because honestly, Microsoft thought the game was underperforming, especially on Xbox One and Xbox One S, and they didn't want people to see that poor performance, especially when you first drop in or when you're loading into the map and think, oh god, this game is crap, and not even buy it. So honestly, I hope within like the next day or two, Microsoft comes out and addresses this and retroactively adds that trial for people to try it out. Anyway, now on to what you're really here for, and that is the performance of the game. This is the biggest difference between this version of the game and the PC version of the game, which is kind of obvious. Now, you hear from a lot of people. Some people will say on one end of the spectrum that this game is terrible, that it runs consistently in the tens of frames per second, and then it's just poorly optimized and it's a piece of shit. Don't waste your money on it. But then you also hear people, most of them are playing on the Xbox One X version, that say that the game looks amazing and it runs very consistently at 30 frames per second. Keep in mind that no version of this game on consoles runs higher than 30 frames per second. So if you're looking for that high fidelity 60 frames per second gameplay, you're just not going to get it here. With that said though, most console players are used to 30 frames per second, so I don't really think it's that much of a problem, at least not for me. I'm used to it. It's fine for first-person shooters on consoles, especially since you're generally slower with your controller, so it works, it's fine. But with that said, how is this game? How does this game perform, especially on the Xbox One S, which is the console that I've been playing on? And it's not so great. It's not terrible. I mean, it does get consistent 30 frames per second if you're in smaller compounds or kind of running around just in the open world or in a field or something like that. But if you go into the larger cities in the game, you will definitely notice a lot of stutter and a lot of dips below that 30 frames per second. In fact, this game frequently dips below 30 frames per second. It hovers right around 20 and 30 frames per second almost all the time on the Xbox One S. Honestly though, it hasn't been that bad for me. I've played like 3 games and I actually won one game, so it didn't hold me back that much. That's how I'm looking at it. The performance wasn't terrible for me, but I do think that it could lead to some frustrating deaths for some people because of the inconsistent performance, so be aware of that. Texture pop-in and texture load times in general are very, very slow, so that makes the game look overall just very muddy on the Xbox One S hardware. Even though I have heard that the Xbox One X version actually looks pretty good and has high quality textures that load in very fast, so I think it goes without saying here that if you have an Xbox One X, this game really isn't going to be much of a problem for you. It's got consistent 30 frames per second with infrequent drops from what I've heard. It looks fine, and overall it's a great experience on the Xbox One X. However, if you have just a regular Xbox One or an Xbox One S like I do, the experience is way less consistent and you do kind of feel kind of frustrated, like there's a lot of tug on the hardware. It's barely working, it's barely there. Now for me, considering the fact that I used to play this game on an okay PC before I upgraded, I'm kind of used to this sub 60 performance, so it's not that huge of a difference for me. I will say that engagements in this game feel very sluggish and slow, and a lot of that is due to the performance. You'll sometimes get in engagements where everything feels like it's kind of going in slow motion, and that's just because the frame rate cannot keep up. All you guys want to know is the game playable? And I say yes, it is definitely playable in its current state, at least for me. I don't have a problem with it really. I mean, like I've said, I've gotten like 7 kills total so far, and I've won a game. I actually won a game. I got a chicken dinner. Not trying to humble brag or anything like that, but I'm just saying that the performance hasn't hit me too much to the point where I have been just absolutely not able to play. Don't listen to the people who are telling you that it's absolutely terrible and unplayable. It's not that bad. However, if you want to wait until the performance is a little bit better, I would suggest waiting for more patches to come out down the line. Now onto a couple other smaller gripes that I had with the game that are not related to performance. One of them being the control scheme. While I do think the movement and combat and things like that all work great, the inventory management controls in this game are just they're not good. Let me be clear, I do think that this is the best they could have done. PUBG has a very odd and unique inventory management system on PC, so it's very difficult for them to translate that here, and I do think honestly they did the best that they could. They give you hotkeys so you can just press single buttons or hold buttons to do things a little bit quicker, but overall it's just kind of clumsy and kind of janky. Also, holding X to reload your weapon is kind of awkward. I see why they did the press X to pick things up, because it allows you to do that quick movement like on PC, but holding X to reload is kind of it's not so great. I would have preferred if they just made it a quick button press like on the left bumper, which seems really underutilized for some reason. Honestly, the controls would be a lot less intimidating for people who are coming into this experience for the first time if you could just remap the buttons. And I know on the Xbox One you can technically remap buttons on your controller on a system level, like just on your controller you can just remap the buttons to do whatever you want, but that doesn't really fix the problem. So yeah, in the future hopefully they'll let you remap the buttons, or at the very least offer alternative control schemes for the movement and things like that to make things a little bit more accessible. And my last little gripe, which is kind of just a right now problem, but the servers are kind of struggling. There's a lot of server-side lag, there's some input lag, and also the servers are actually down as I'm recording this right now. But I think that's just like launch day issues. I mean, it's to be expected with a game that's this huge and this popular to have some problems on its first day. But yeah, I don't think this will continue to be a problem. Hopefully it gets fixed. I haven't noticed that many issues, but yeah, there are some server issues within these first days, so keep that in mind. So overall, like I said, it's incredibly impressive that they were able to get this game to actually work on base Xbox One hardware, but they did have to sacrifice a lot to get it to work on that hardware. As I said before, if you're playing on the Xbox One X, you really don't have much of a reason to not get this game. I mean, it's incredibly fun, it's incredibly intense, and it runs pretty well on the Xbox One X, and it'll only get better as time goes on when they release updates and stuff like that. However, if you're playing on Xbox One S or the original the big, huge Xbox One, you might want to weigh your pros and cons a little bit, or my pros and cons, and you might want to watch some more live streams and things like that, or bits of gameplay to really decide whether you want to get into this game or not. So would I recommend this game to you? Well, like I said, if you have an Xbox One X, yes, I say you should definitely go out and get it. It's the hottest game right now, and I think you'll have a great time. If you have a high-end gaming PC and you don't have any friends on Xbox, then what are you even doing watching this video? You don't need it. Just go play it on PC. However, I really want to caution those who are playing on the Xbox One X and the OG Xbox that the game does have a lot of performance issues. So if you're considering getting it, really do your research, watch some live streams, and see if the performance is something you can handle. For me personally, it's not that bad. It's not good, and it's not consistent by any stretch of the imagination, but it's definitely playable for me, and it's something that I am used to in console shooters, to have sub 30 frames per second, so it's not that big of a deal for me. But if performance is a deal breaker for you, then you might want to turn the other way, or at least wait until a couple more patches down the road. But yeah, that's it for me in this video. Once again, thanks to XCage for the gameplay for this video. I wouldn't have been able to make this video without you. I don't even know you, but you provided the gameplay for this video, so thanks for that. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to check out our channel for all the other content, and I'll see you guys on the very stuttery 25 frames per second Battlefield. Bye!